Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are going to talk about Amazon Honeycode, which is a no-code app builder platform. Let's see what a no-code app builder platform is. So, a no-code platform is a development platform that uses visual development environment to allow layman users to create apps through methods such as drag and drop, adding application components to create a complete application. So, it is one of the easiest ways of creating applications, both web and mobile. And in this video, we are actually going to create a fairly intricate application using Amazon Honeycode. Alright, so to summarize, Amazon Honeycode is a no-code app builder platform. Alright, now back to our presentation. So, let's look at what kind of application we are trying to build. So we are trying to build an approval workflow. So imagine that you have an organization in which there are a lot of AWS accounts, and you want to make sure that whenever a resource is created into any of your AWS accounts, it has to be requested for and approved, and only then it has to be created. And also all these requests and approvals should be searchable, so that any resource you look at, you should know who actually requested for it, who approved it, and who ended up implementing it. Alright, so let's look at the workflow really quickly. Alright, so resource requester requests for a resource, for example, in this case a T2 micro instance, which is currently in pending state. So request is in pending state. Now upon a request or upon the request that got created, an email is fired to the resource approver, and he's going to log into the application, probably using a mobile app, right? So your application is supporting both browser-based logins as well as the mobile app-based logins, right? So the resource approver is going to look at this request, seems like legitimate, and he's going to approve the request. So notice that the status now on the top right of your screen has changed to approved. Now once that happens, another email is sent to the resource implementer or the operations team, and the operations team is going to go ahead and look at this request, seems like legitimate to them as well, and they're going to go ahead and implement this request into the AWS console. Gonna go ahead and update the status of this request to be implemented. Fairly complicated flow already, but imagine that after this implementation happens, you also need to send an email back to the resource requester. Now there will be a lot of, or there could be a lot of such requests that flow through your organization. Now you also need to provide a search functionality. Now seems like a complicated application, right? It requires a database, definitely requires for the application to run somewhere, and also it requires to maintain all these users. So a lot of user management is required, and notice you also need a lot of notification handling, right? So it might take days, if not weeks, to actually implement, but with Amazon Honeycode, we are going to deploy this application. In fact, we're going to develop this application within this video and deploy it and go through the entire functionality for requester, approver, and implementer within next few minutes. Alright, are you excited? Let's go! Alright, so let's talk about prerequisites. Well, to use Amazon Honeycode, you do not even need an AWS account initially. All you need is an email address. Well, so you can use your Gmail or your organization email address. What I've done is I've created a temporary email, and I've gone to the builder.honeycode.aws, and I'm going to say that I do not have an account and create one, and let's say I'm going to call it approver. So I need to create basically 3 different accounts for 3 different type of users that we have just seen in the presentation, which are requester, approver, and implementer. So I'm just gonna create an approver account, and this is going to be my email, right, that I just copied from here, and I'm going to use a password, confirm the password, and create account, and yeah. So now as soon as that happens, it's gonna send me a confirmation email. So if I scroll down, and you can go into your email, obviously you should have the confirmation there. So I'm gonna go ahead and open the link in new tab, and notice that it has verified my email. and I'm gonna go ahead and sign in now. So use the same email, and so there you go. Alright, so now that we are signed in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same for the implementer. I've already created a requester account, right? I'm going to create for implementer, and then I'm going to come back and we are going to create this nice application in the next few minutes in this video. Alright, we'll be back once I have created the implementer account. Alright, so I have 3 different accounts created for the 3 different types of users. Of course, you can create more accounts, but for what we're trying to develop today, all we need is these 3 accounts. So this one is my requester account. So let me click here. So notice that it says requesters team. This one is the approvers account that we created together, and another one is the implementers account. Alright, so we have 3 different accounts that we have created. Now we are going to create the application into the into the requesters team. So once you log in, this is where you land in Amazon Honeycode. Now what you have to do to create an application, now you have to create a workbook, right? And within the workbook you have different tables and different applications that you can create, and we're going to create one such. So what we're going to do is I'm going to say that now Amazon Honeycode provides many different standard templates, and they are fairly intricate templates to get you started, right? So notice you can create a timesheet manager, you can create a field service agent. For example, if you have a car servicing business, you can send your agents to the car or to your customer and have them enter the information that you can look at from anywhere. Or you can create an inventory management application, and there are so many different content tracker, right? But we are going to start from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to call this resource SOURCE requester, and it's going to be requesters team, and go ahead and create. Alright, so notice that it already starts showing me some hints. I'm just gonna skip this, and now notice that you are currently in the resource requester application, right, or resource requester workbook, and within this workbook you have tables and you have app builder. Now we're going to create a table, so let's go ahead and create a table, and we definitely need a users table, correct? So let's go ahead and create that users table. Alright, so I'm going to call this table to be users, and the column 1 is going to be the email of the user, the column 2 is going to be the name, and okay, I think I misspelled that, and the column 3 is going to be the role of the user. Alright, so again, we have created a workbook, and now we are creating tables, and you can look at all your tables here. So example, users is the only table we have. Now what we're going to do is we're gonna bring up our email IDs, and I'm just gonna copy them one by one here. And again, you can actually import this from a CSV as well. We are not going to do that now here, and let me copy all of them, and this is requester. I'm just gonna call this as maybe John, and the role is going to be requester, maybe call it John requester. Next up is going to be our approver. Go ahead and do that, and maybe call Jessica approver, and the role of course is approver. And the next step is this email ID, and I'm gonna say Jim, implementer, and there you go. So we just created a table. That's it. right? Now this table can serve as a database. Now in this application that we are going to build, we require a little bit more than this. We require other tables as well. For example, we need to create a request table, and we also need to show some sort of pickup list, right? And we're going to talk about what that is, but before we did that, let's see, and this is fairly, if you are working on Excel, or if you have worked on Excel, you're going to feel right at home. So you can format, for example. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and format this to be plain text, right? Or anything. You have so many options. Notice that one such option is row link or pick list, or and pick list, and we're going to look at that a little bit later. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pause the video recording here and come back, and by the time I would have created all the tables. I just don't want you to wait and while I create all the tables. So I'll be back once all the tables are created, and I'm going to explain what each of those tables do. Alright, so we have created all the tables that we need. So let's look at all the tables. So the users table that we created together. The next table we created is accounts, and this is just so that we can look at these accounts in the select box of our application. So these are some fictitious AWS account that your organization may have. So just a single row table. Similarly, we have a services table, and this is all going to make sense once we look at or once we start building the application. So this is the AWS service that we allow the resources to be created for, or requests to be created for within our organization. You can always add some more, but that's pretty much it. And the most important, so we looked at users, we looked at accounts, we looked at services. Now let's look at the request table, right? So all we want to capture from the request is we want to create a request ID, and we're going to see how we can create a dynamic request ID. The request account now, or AWS account in which this request has to be created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to format this account, and I'm going to choose the format as row link or pick list, and I'm going to say that this account has to come from accounts table, right? So now notice that you get all the list here if you want to manually add entries, which we are not going to do, by the way. In fact, alright, so let's look at the next one. Again, for service, I'm going to go ahead and say format, and go ahead and say row link and pick list, and choose, you guessed it, services, right? So there you go. Now again, similarly for the rest of them, I'm gonna go ahead and okay, so another thing that I need is basically the users, right? So in this table we are capturing the request ID, AWS account, service. Both of these are coming from somewhere else, right? And we're going to take resource details, estimated monthly run rate of that particular resource, just so that the approver can approve it. The status could be pending, approved, or implemented. Now created by, so created by, again, it has to come from our users table. So I'm going to go ahead and say row link and users, and then same thing I'm going to do for approved by, so that we know who approved this particular request. So row link and users. Now again, implemented by, which is another one. So hold on, I'm gonna go ahead and get into the format, again row link or pick list. Excellent. Alright, so now notice that we have updated some of the things here. I think this hasn't gotten updated. Hold on, users. Okay, so that seems to be done. Now there are some date fields here as to, for example, when this request was created. So created on. Now let's update this to be a date field. So format, and I'm going to choose date, and that's it. And you can always change, let's say let's make it full. Created on, last updated on. These I think are the two dates that we need to update. So I'm gonna go ahead into format again choose the date, and let's pick up the same format as before. Alright, excellent. Alright, so now I think we are done for this particular table. So just to summarize what we did until now, we created 4 tables. One is the users table, which houses the information about our users, what is the email of the user, what is the name of the user, and what role the user is going to play in this application. Then we have two tables for lookups, for example, what are going to our AWS accounts. Then services, what services we allow two requests to be created for, and the main one is the request table. And what we also learned was the information that has to come from different places or different tables can be formatted as to come from a pick list. And we also formatted the date table or date column to be date, two columns in fact, the last updated on and I think created on, right? So these two, right? So these are date columns. All right, excellent. So now that we have our database done, our database part done, let's go ahead and build our application. All right, so to do that, we're gonna come here into Builder and see there are no apps. So I'm gonna go ahead and say Build App, and I'm gonna say Build from scratch. I'm gonna skip the hints. So notice now what it wants me to do is to design a screen. That's basically what we want to do, right? So let me call this screen as AWS resource requester, and maybe I should call the app to be resource requester also. Right, excellent. Maybe fix that. All right, excellent. All right, so now in this particular box or in this particular screen, this is the welcome screen. What we want is, let's say, create request button, right? Or a create request form. So I'm going to go ahead and say add, and let's go ahead and add a form. Now it gives me two options. I'm going to choose the first option where it gives me a button to do something, and from there it goes to get the entries for that particular form, right? So I'm going to say I want to create a form to add new requests. So notice that add form data to, I'm going to say requests, right? And what input do I take from my user? Do I take request ID? No, I create a request ID. I do take AWS account, I take service. Now these things are coming from our request table, so it is intelligent to understand that if I have to add a request, these fields need to be updated. Alright, so resource details, yes, estimated MRR, status, I'm going to make it pending by default, created by, I'm going to use the logged in user, approved by is not required, created on, I'm going to default to today, right? Last updated on, I don't need that, implemented by, I don't need that now, I need comments, I don't need approver comments because I'm not really approving the request right away, implemented comments are not required. So all I need to take from my user is AWS account, service, resource details, estimated MRR, and comments. So I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and create. Now this is where the magic is going to start. So notice that it's not been a lot of time, but we already have something here. So I'm going to say instead of add request row, I'm going to say create requests, right? Or request. Let me call it request. Create request. All right. Create a request. All right. So at this point in time, we actually have a fairly working application. In fact, we can go ahead and view app. Again, we're doing this in the requester account, right? So now notice that we actually have an app, and if you say create request, amazing, right? You get an AWS account to choose from. So let's say I choose development. Then I get what service to choose. I'm going to say EC2. I'm going to say 1 T2 micro instance, right? Estimated MRR, I'm going to say $8. And comments, I'm going to say the comments are please approve, right? And I'm going to say done, right? So really nothing happens, or at least we didn't really see anything happening. But if we go back to the database, or if we go back to our data tables, and let's go to the request table, open it in a new tab. Notice that within a few minutes we actually have a form which takes input, right? and it creates some entries. So notice that these three were the empty columns or empty rows. I'm gonna delete those rows. We don't need them anymore. And notice that we actually have an entry here. Now there is not much in the way of this entry. Notice that we said please approve, because there are other fields that are not filled up, so it really doesn't show an actual request as it would have been. But notice we are actually already making progress. Now one thing I wanted to do was maybe go ahead and format this to be a currency. So let's go ahead and say currency, and decimal places to be 2. Yeah, makes sense. So, and this is autosave, you don't have to save it again. So, but we were actually able to create an entry. Now we need to fill a request ID, right, which has to be which needs to be there, maybe starting with 1, right? But we physically, or we entered that ourselves. Now we want this entry to be created automatically. We're gonna see how we can do that. We need the status to be updated as pending. We need the created by entry to be there, right? The current user, and we also need created on date, right? So these things need to be auto-populated. So let's see how we can do that. So back to our application, I'm going to go into create request, right? Let's close this, add objects part. Now the form that you see is below here. So this is when you click a request, this is where you land in the request form, and within the request form we have all this, and then we press done, remember? So now on the done, by default all the entries within this form actually go into the table. That is what we saw, but in addition to all these entries we also want additional entries, which is the request ID and created by and created on and things like that. So let's see how we can do that. Now if you know Excel, you are really going to excel here, no pun intended. But if you don't, that's not a problem. There's not a whole lot that you need to know in the way of creating applications here. Alright, so I'm gonna say, so what I did was I came here, I went into, so notice displays true, that means this, and we're gonna see how we can conditionally enable or disable controls. But for now, this done button, we're going to say, maybe let's call it create, right, request. Right, so this create request, I'm gonna say, now I'm gonna go into actions, and I'm going to create an automation. I'm going to say edit automation, right? So what we want to do, so notice that we didn't really create an automation, we are editing the automation. So notice by default what it is doing, it is saying, okay, take data from AWS account content, which is this field, notice AWS account content, and put it into the AWS account, which is in the request table. That's what basically it is doing, right? Similarly, any information that comes in from this front end, so to speak, goes into that particular tables or request tables particular value. So now what we want to do is we want to have the automatic request ID that needs to get created. So this request ID. So for that we are going to use a formula, right? And let's get on with it. In fact, so I'm going to say add another, and I'm going to say is equal to. So notice now all of a sudden it brings up that option. I'm going to say sum of, right, and I'm going to say max of, and I'm going to say requests, right? So request is our table, and I'm going to say the request ID space ID and close bracket, close another bracket here. In fact, before that I'm going to put a 1 here, and I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. So what I'm saying is take the maximum of request ID, and then to that add 1 sum of max of request ID and 1. So that's should be 2 once after we create a new entry, because here we have 1 already. Now if we did not have anything, it would have defaulted to 1. So alright, so and write this to request ID. Alright, now similarly we need to do additional things, right? So sometimes it might show you an error here, don't panic. relax, just make sure that this formula is correct, and I'm going to show you where you can get these formulas and other peculiar functions that are available for Honeycode, and there are not that many. Many of the Excel formulas can be used as is or as they are. Alright, so the next thing that we want to add, of course, is created by and created on. So let's add the created on first. So add another, and another Excel function I'm going to use here is today function. So I'm going to say today, and I'm going to say add this to created on. So again, you might see an error here, just don't panic. Alright, and I'm going to say add another, and now we want to add the user who created the request. So I'm going to say is equal to, and I'm going to say $. So notice that it says sys user. I'm going to select that, and I need the email of the sys user, so I'm going to say email. I could always use the name of the sys user, but for now I'm going to use email, and I'm going to say this is created by, or add this to created by. Alright, and another thing that we needed to do, let's look at what was. So we did created by, we did created on, and status, right? We need to update the status, so let's do that now. I'm gonna go ahead and add another, and here I'm just going to say pending, and I'm gonna say add this to status. Alright, and really that's pretty much all I wanted to do. Now once a request is created, I also want it to email to my approver that hey, there's a request for you to approve, right? Now before so to do that, what I'm going to say is I'm going to say add action. So until now we added added fields, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and add another, or rather not add another, I'm going to say add actions. So let's go ahead and add actions, and I'm going to say notify, right? So let's notify, and whom do I want to be notified? I want our user to be notified, right? So let's look at what is the email ID of our approver. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this email, right, ID, and go ahead and put it here, and now it's going to show you an error, and I'll tell you why that error is, and this automation may not work right away, but I'm going to say a request to be approved. Alright, and I'm just going to say attach link to this application. Alright, so that's pretty much what I wanted to do here, and you do see a warning here, and the warning is because we are creating this application within the resource requesters account or requesters account, and this is an approver's account or approver's email to whom we have not really shared the app with, right? So no need to worry about that. We're going to do this a little bit later. Just wanted to complete this form as much as possible. Alright, so this is all auto saved. Now let's go back to our application again. So resource requester, and maybe let me refresh that. You don't really have to. I'm just going to do that. Now what we expect to do is create another request, and hopefully now some more data needs to be added, or should get added into this table. Alright, so let's do that. Create request. Alright, I'm going to say I need in the dev account I need to create EC2 instance, and I'm going to say 1 T2 medium instance, estimated MRR maybe $12, and I'm going to say that will shut it down when not needed, so that my approver approves the request. I'm going to go ahead and create a request. Alright, so request gotten created, and now let's go back and look at our table. So notice that we have our request here, right? So we have a request. Now the one thing that did not work is is this number has come as 1. Ideally it should have been 2, but notice rest of the things are correct. So we have the AWS account service that was already there, T2 medium instance that we entered, the value has come in as currency now because we formatted it that way. The status is pending, created by. Now notice that the created by is no more blank, it actually has the email of the requester, and created on. Notice this is January 9, 2021, and these are the comments. Amazing. So the only thing that did not work is here. Now let's create another request and see if this is a problem that we need to solve, or this is just because of the first request, right? In fact, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so I'll create another request, and maybe this time in QA, SQS, I'm gonna say resource details or input Q, and I'm gonna say estimated MRR to be $5 for 5 million requests, and I'm gonna say go ahead and create request. So go back to our request table. Alright, so for some reason I think it is not incrementing. Let me see what is the problem, and let's fix this first, and then we'll begin adding more screens to our application. But for now, notice that we have already done a lot. Alright, so let's debug as to what happened, and because of which we are getting this we're not getting this number actually incremented. I think there has to be something wrong with our formula which we use to create the next request ID. So I'm gonna go to that formula, and I can see the mistake that is made here. So notice that the sum is the outside function. So what we want to do is actually copy the comma 1 here and here. So basically what we're saying is sum of max plus 1, right? Earlier we had not done it correct, so everything was coming as 1. So hopefully now this should change. So let's go back and create another request. So create request, and I'm gonna say prod, and I'm gonna say S3 edit value, S3 bucket, ABC123 date time. So I want this bucket to be created. I'm gonna say the estimated MRR to be $1, and I'm gonna say please create in please create this bucket. Alright, so I'm gonna say create request. So let's go back to our request table, and notice that now we have 2, right? So that's nice. Now before we go ahead and add more screens, let's go ahead and delete all these first couple of rows, because we want to have a cleaner data, and anyways we are testing, so seems like now we are able to increment, and that's working all great. So now let's go and add another screen to our application. Now what we want to do is in fact what we want to do is to be able to actually view all the requests and also approve or implement the request, right? Or update whether it is approved or implemented. So let's do that. Alright, and remember we haven't yet seen the notification in the implementer email, and I've already told you the reason for that. We're going to do that a little bit later. Okay, so let's go ahead and add a screen. Alright, and to this screen I'm gonna go ahead and add a column list, and the column list is basically the entries within a particular table. So I'm gonna go ahead and say request table, and I need request ID, AWS account, service, resource detail. Another thing I need is status. That's good. So this is basically it is asking me what you need to see on the screen, right, for all requests. And if you look at, or if you click on one particular request, whether you want to see the detailed screen or not, I'm going to say yes, I do want to see the detailed screen if I click a particular request. So I need request ID, and yeah, I think the status, yeah, this seems like Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and say create. So notice that it created this screen, and I'm gonna call this screen as all requests. And yeah, so all requests, and that's pretty much that. And now we need a way for this screen to be invoked. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another button here. So on our first screen, I'm going to say add a button, right? And I'm going to say view all request. And then in the automation, I'm going to say once you click, go to screen 1, which is our request detail screen, or rather this screen, screen 1, all requests. So yeah, now just to differentiate this a little bit, let me add a different color, maybe green. Right, looks nice. Alright, so let's go back to our application and notice that it is already refreshed. So view all request is an option you already have, so click that. So notice that you can view all the requests. So until now we could only create request with this one, but now we can actually view all requests, right? And if you create or click on the request, notice that all the details of this request are already there. So all requests, right? And you can of course search a request. So for example, I say SQS. So notice here, and I can search by any of these columns. So notice how much of this stuff is already getting created for you without you having to write any code. So prod, and alright, so notice, nice, we already have a screen, we have a detail screen also. Now what we want to do is once the user comes onto this particular screen, we want the user to actually approve or implement this particular request, right? Or approve, and if approved, that request needs to be implemented as well. So let's get cracking on that one. Alright, so again, go back to our screen, okay, and let's go to the request detail screen. And to this screen, I'm gonna go ahead and add a button, and maybe add another button. In fact, you know what, I'm just going to add one button for now, and let's call this button to be approve. Okay, and let's go into the action, and I'm going to go ahead and create an automation. And what we are going to say is, okay, add action, I want to update or insert row. So when we approve this request, it needs to get updated into this table as approved as opposed to pending, and some other things needs to be updated, for example approved by, right? Excellent. So I'm going to say I need to update the request table. Excellent. Alright, now let's go ahead and what are the things that we need to update, right? So let's go ahead and do that, and we're gonna deal with this error a little bit later, but before we did that, let's go ahead and update the things that we need to update. So for example, we are going to say that we need the status to be approved, right? So I'm going to say approved, and that needs to be updated into the status column. Excellent. So that should happen. Next up, what we want to do is add another. Now we need to update the date, right? So I'm going to say today, right? Today. And I'm gonna update it on last updated on, where is it, last updated on date. And I also need to update, go ahead and update who approved the request, right? So I'm gonna say is equal to $, sys user, and I'm gonna say the email of the sys user, and go ahead and update that into the approved by column. All right, excellent. So seems like we're pretty much done here, except that we need to deal with this particular error. So now it says, okay, you do want to update something, but how do I know which row to update, right? So for that, we're gonna give it a formula, and that formula is going to be so what we're trying to say here is equal to, and we're going to say, so what we're going to do is we're going to say this request ID column data. So notice this request ID column data. So I'm going to enter that here. So I'm going to say request ID column data, right, is equal to request of request ID. So what I'm trying to tell it that if this request ID and the request ID in the table, they match, then within that row update the status to be approved, the date to be today, and the approved by to be this one. Now just like before, let's add another action here. So once this gets approved, I want the notification that needs to be sent to the person who's going to implement. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and put this email here, and I'm going to say implementation pending. I think okay, let me call it implementation pending. Alright, and just share the link to the app, or I could write any text, frankly. Alright, so seems like, notice that it's gonna say that this is not found in contacts. That's fine, because we haven't shared this app with this particular contact yet. Okay, so we're gonna do that a little bit later. Okay, so for now, seems like we're good. We have the approve button, and we have created some sort of automation on that, right? So let's see if this works. All right, so let's go to our resource requester, view all requests. Let's look at any of these requests, and notice we have the approve button here. So I'm going to go ahead and click this button, and watch here, approved by, right? And the last updated on dates, they need to change, and also the status has to update. So I'm going to say approve. So notice that the status changed to approved. Approved by is the same user. Ideally this should not be the case, and eventually it won't be. And also notice that the dates here, right? And that's it. That's amazing. Now the one thing that we haven't done here is approver comments, right? Approver has to put some comments, right? We want the approver to put some comments, and we can't do that because this field is not editable. So let's fix that. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and click this, right? Click here in fact, and I'm gonna say this to be editable, right? And now we can edit that, but this value also has to go. So I'm gonna go into approve, and I'm going to go into edit automation, and add another activity for it to do. So I'm going to say so similarly, as you have seen before, like we have added a string here, but this time what we want to do is go ahead and add the contents of approver comment column data into here, right? So into the comments, so which are this approver comments. So let's do that. Alright, so I'm gonna say is equal to $approve, so we want approve comments, right? So let's go to approve comments column approver. So let's say approver comments column data, and that needs to go into approver comments. So hopefully that should do it, and we're gonna wait for this error to go away. Alright, it's gone now. So let's try it once more. So I'm gonna go into resource requester, right? And go to all request once more. Notice that this request is approved, the next one is pending. I'm going to go ahead into the pending one, and notice that this value is now editable. So I'm going to say please be careful. Isn't this a production environment? Yes, it is prod. Okay, so approve comments, excellent, approve. So notice that same thing has happened. The status is approved, all these dates are updated, approved by is updated, and our comment hopefully are updated. So let's look at that. So in the table, notice that here are the comment, please be careful, this is production, right? Or it is production. Excellent. So pretty much done, right? The approval workflow is working. Now the next step we want to do definitely is that we also want to create an implementation functionality, right? So let's do that. So what I'm going to do is, and again, this is where the genius of Honeycode is so evident. I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this entire section. I'm going to just call this implement. Maybe just give it a different color, right? So let's do that. Right, makes sense. In fact, yeah. So approve and implement, right? And let's go ahead and now edit that automation. So notice that all the automation that was already there, it has come in here, right? But it is copied from this approved. So what we're going to do is, now the status needs to be implemented as opposed to approved. Implemented, and today everything seems good. So last updated on needs to be today. That's good. Now here, instead of approved by, we need it to be implemented by. And now instead of approver comments, we need the implementer comments. Implementer comments. Yeah, seems good. And they need to go into implementer comment, right? So I'm going to go ahead and update that really quickly. Excellent. So we have that. Let it save the changes. And I think we are good at this point in time. The only thing we need to do is, instead of sending the mail to ourselves now, now that the request has gotten implemented, we want the mail to be sent to the created by user, which is basically created by column data. So let's do that. So I'm going to go ahead and update this notification. And notice how you don't always have to use a hard-coded email. I can always use a formula here. So I'm going to say dollar created by column data, right? That's basically the email ID, and that's it. So this email has to go to the person who actually created this request. So okay, again, going to implement, edit automation, and yeah, so notice it has it was, so if you double click here, notice that it is a formula, but it gets resolved to the person who created the request. Now, all right, so let's run the implementation functionality really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead into our application and view all requests. Notice that both of the applications, or both of the requests, are now approved. I'm going to go ahead and click here and maybe go ahead and, oh, so now the one funny thing that we did not do is we didn't enable this implementer comments. Let's do that really quickly. Go back to all request. Here I'm going to also enable this column, right, and make it editable. Yeah, that's pretty much, I think, all we need to do. Hopefully that should do it. I'm going to click here. Yeah, so here we go. And we could actually put conditional editing, like we can say, you know what, only if, or in fact we can even not show this particular row saying, or field saying, okay, if we're doing implementation, this need not be there, right? But for now we're trying to prove a concept that we can create a fairly complicated application. So let's go to the one that has comments. So let's go ahead and say implemented, and I'm going to say, what was this, S3 bucket, and let's say 01. So notice that the day has changed now here in India. So I'm going to say I created this particular bucket 2020. Now this is after the implementer has actually gone onto the AWS console and did something, right? And yeah, this is the name of the bucket. I'm going to say is equal to this and implement. So now notice that comments, So these comments have gotten updated. The status has gone to implemented from approved, and it also updates the implemented by. Currently all of these are the same email IDs, but that's going to change once we actually take it for a spin. Excellent. So great. Now we have the application up and running quite well, right? That's quite good, right? Now we need to share this application with our actual implementer and actual requester, right? Or rather actual approver. So let's do that next. All right, so to summarize, what we have done until now is we have actually created an application. We actually started by creating the database. Again, in the database also, these things should get updated, right? And they will. Okay, hold on. Yeah, so we only implemented the one request, so that's why it's here. We can also go ahead and implement the first one. But yeah, so notice that we created the database first. We created 4 tables. Then we went ahead and just dragged and dropped and created all the screens that we needed, right? And amazing that that got us through. So now what we want to do next is we want to share this application. Now before we did that, in fact, we want to add the resource approver and the requester to our team. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to copy these email IDs and go into my teams and in the requesters team. So at this point we are pretty much done with the app development. It didn't even take an hour to create such an intricate app, and once after you see how this application is able to send emails and everything, that's going to be awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and add a team member, and I'm going to say add invite. Alright, so that's one invitation, and let's send the invitation also to our another user. So now notice, if you have more than 20 members in your team, you may need to upgrade your plan, but for many of the users, 20 users are more than what they need, especially for applications like this. But if you do, obviously there are a lot of good options available. Alright, so we've added 2 users. Now let's go ahead and see if they got any kind of notification. So I'm going to go ahead into the approver, right, and maybe refresh a bit. In fact, while I'm there, I'm going to refresh it here as well, and close that. So ideally you should get an invitation here. Or I'm not really sure. I think you should get it in email at least. Okay, let's see. Go back into my email. So notice requester invited you to requester's team. Alright, excellent. So I'm gonna go ahead and yeah, so requester has invited to join the team. Go to the Honeycode to accept the invite, and that's it. So that's why I should have seen something here, or we should have seen some notification here. We haven't yet. Now we're gonna wait. Sometimes this might take a little bit of a time. Alright, let's look at the other one as well. Even there I should get an email. In fact, if I go back to the email list, notifications, okay, so notice that here also there's a notification. So we need to go ahead and accept a particular notification once it arrives. Alright, we're gonna wait a little bit. So while we still wait for the notifications to arrive so that these two folks can actually go ahead and join our team, there's one thing I wanted to note, that because when we implemented the request, we actually gave the same email ID as the requester, and that is definitely on our team. That is, we are ourselves on our team. Notice that we actually got the implementation pending email, right? So that's kind of there, right? In fact, maybe while we wait for that, let's take a look at our application once more. So I can go to this My Drive, Resource Requester, and go ahead and edit the app once more. And let's go to the implement. Now the reason why we got implementation pending as opposed to implementation done is because we never changed this message. So I'm going to go ahead and change that, implementation done. And let's go ahead and yeah, it's going to save itself. And now let's implement the one request that we haven't implemented, so which is the first request, and hopefully we should get a notification here of yeah, so we all request. I'm gonna go into the approved request, and let me just say implementation comments is done and implement. So notice that it has changed to implemented, and notice that we have a notification here, and that's the implementation done notification. Alright, now this is being seen only on the same account, but ideally we want it to be going to the right accounts, which are the actual approver and implementer accounts. So we're gonna wait for the invitations to be sent out and to arrive. They haven't yet here, and we're gonna still go ahead and wait for them. So alright, so we haven't really seen an invite that has gone in. What we are going to do is just to be sure, we're going to just go ahead and do the next step in that. I'm going to go ahead here, and we're going to check if that triggers the proper invitation or not. So we're going to go into our app, and we're going to say share that. Now the reason why we don't see any users here is because our users haven't really accepted, or our team members haven't really accepted the invite. Now while we wait, there's one update we wanted to do, and I've done that now, is basically making sure that this when we go into the request detail, only implementers see the implement button and the approvers see the approver button, just to show you the conditional rendering can be done. So what I've done here is I've used a find row function, and what I'm saying basically is if the user's email matches the role of approver, only then show this, right? And you can look at this function by just searching on Google. You can say Honeycode find row, so and it will take you to the nice documentation that the Honeycode community creates, right? So what we have done basically here is we are saying try to find a row within the users table. So let's go to the users table now, and where the email ID is the email ID of the logged in user, and if that user has the approver role, only then show the approver button. So now if we use our app, so let's do that. In fact, go here and view app, because our logged in user is the requester user. So I'm going to go ahead and go into any of this. Notice that we don't see those buttons, but when we are eventually able to join our team members, they should see that button, right? Now we're gonna wait a little bit more just to check if any of the invites arrive. and if not, we're gonna do this a little bit later, but for now, again, we are just going to wait. Alright, so actually the invitations were there. All I had to do was to actually go to Honeycode. I should have used this link as opposed to going and waiting for the invitation. So when I click this link, it says join the requesters team. So I'm gonna go ahead and join, and the same thing, notice that it says invitation accepted, and so I've done that with the approvers now. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing for implementer. I have the team email, so this requester is invited to the requesters team. Go to Honeycode, and join. So that's amazing. Now if I go back here and refresh the requesters team, so this is the account in which we created our app. So notice that approver and implementers are actually added to our team. Now we can actually go ahead and share our application with them. So I'm gonna go ahead and share. So I think for some reason it has not yet here. Okay, implementer, and I'm gonna go ahead and approver and update. So now there should be some sort of a notification. So notice that here, okay, new team member added. I should get another notification that the app has been shared with me, or if not, yeah. So now notice that I am in, so I'm still in requester. Hold on, let me go to the, yeah. So now notice that currently I'm here in implementer, and I already see the app here, which is amazing. Also now if I went to approvers, notice that since I shared the app is already here. That's amazing. So that's good. So I already see the app. Now we're gonna run through this app properly this time. The requester is going to request resource, the approver is going to approve it, and then the implementer is going to go ahead and implement it. Alright, so let's do it. Okay, so here we are. I'm gonna go to the requester first. So notice that this team, I'm on the requester. I'm gonna go ahead and open this app. And create request, and I'm gonna say for dev I want to create maybe an SQS queue. I'm gonna call, say, input queue. In fact, let's do that for, let's say, QA, and I'm gonna say MRR is $10, 10 million messages. Right, messages, just as a comment, create a request. So notice the request has gotten created. If I go to view all request, there is that third request. But now if I go into there is nothing I can do. I cannot really approve this request or implement it. So to do that, first it needs to be approved. So I'm going to go ahead into the approvers team, right, and again open that app there. And in fact, I can look at the notification. So notice it says a request to be approved, and I should have actually gotten an email as well. So if I go back to the list, so this is this I think is the approver email. Let's wait for it. So notice that it says a request to be approved, and hopefully we should be able to do that. So I'm gonna go to view all requests, and pending request is this one. Go here and notice I get the approve button. That's amazing, isn't it? And I'm gonna say approved, be careful. Okay, I'm just gonna say approved here, and approve. So notice that now the approved by is a different email ID, approved, and the date has date is the one, and I think this date is coming from a US region, and that's the reason why it is still showing the old region. I'm in India, so that's a different date as of now. But anyways, so we have approved this particular request, and now the workflow should have gotten triggered, and an implementation email should have gotten sent to the implementer. So let's look at the implementer's mailbox. In fact, we can look at the notifications. So notice that I get an implementation pending here. I can go ahead and open the app for the implementer. So remember that the approve and the implement buttons were not available for requester. They were only available, the approve button in fact was only available to the approver. And now if I view request and go to the approved request, notice that now I have the implement button available, right? And we were able to do that by using a formula. In fact, let's look at that formula just to be sure as to what is happening here. So what we're doing is we are finding a row within the users table where the email is equal to the email of the logged in user, and if the role of that particular email matches implementer, only then we are setting the visibility of this button to be true, otherwise it's false. Alright, never mind, go back to the implement, and I'm gonna say implemented and implement. So now notice that everything is good, all fields are completed, right? Isn't that amazing, right? It required you less than an hour, and that too, we had some glitches in between where I did not really realize I had to click that particular button to actually approve or join the team. But now that we have joined the team, it's amazing how fast we are able to create an application which has a proper database backing it, right? It also has a fair bit of workflow, right, in that we create a request, we approve it, we implement it, and also there are a lot of notifications that are flowing across, and all that you are able to do without writing a single line of code, even for the UI or database or any of the components of this app. So before we talk more about Honeycode in general, let's look at our request table once more. So notice that all the requests are now implemented. This is the latest one that we ended up implementing, right? And that basically does it for us, right? We have implemented our entire workflow, which involved database, which involved UI, and which also involved the notifications, right, and different types of users. Now all of our users have actually accessed this application via web browser, Chrome or Firefox in my case, right? But you can actually download the Honeycode application and log into that application and use that use that also to actually look at the applications, right? So let's do that, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead into a resource requester and create a request. Okay, I'm going to say this is, let's say, for prod. I'm going to say EC2. I want T2 large, and I'm going to say just 20 comments. Please approve, and create a request. Now if I view all requests, that request should be in pending state. Now next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go into my mobile, right? Log in as the user who is the approver, and go ahead and approve that particular request. Now what I need to do for that is I need to download the Amazon Honeycode app, and I use Android, but it is also available for iPhone as well, or iOS as well. So over to my mobile. Alright, so I'm on my mobile now. I already downloaded this app, Amazon Honeycode, and I'm opening it now. So I'm going to sign in with the approver's email. So now notice that I am in the application right now, and I see the resource requester app. I'm going to go in there. And view all requests. Scroll down, go to the pending request, and I'm going to say approved from my Android phone. Excellent, and approve. So notice that now the status is approved, and that's it. I can go back to all the requests and notice that the status has been approved. So now I was able to actually use a mobile phone to actually use the application that I created in Honeycode. Now we're going to use the same implementer web login, but let's go ahead and implement this request. So I'm in the implementer now, view all request, approved. Here, and go ahead and implement it. Implemented. So let's go back and look at the table really quickly. So I'm just gonna refresh. Okay, so I think my internet just went away. Alright, so my internet is back, and now let's wait to see if that request went in for implementing. So it hasn't, because my internet was out. So I'm going to go ahead and implement it once more, and that was, I think, the reason why it said it didn't really work. Okay, so let me implement that once more. Alright, so I am in all requests now. Notice that the request that I approved with the mobile application seems to be here. I'm going to click that, go ahead, and I'm going to say implemented and implement. So notice that the implemented by gets updated here, and that's it. And our requester should now get an email also, or at least a notification that the request has been implemented. And notice that in the request table, even the request that got created from the web then got approved from the mobile application, and again got implemented or updated the status as implemented from the mobile application, from the web application, again using a browser, that all the status has been updated properly. Now if I look at the notifications, so notice I get a notification that the implementation is done. Alright, so we actually created a fairly complicated application backed by a database, or sort of a database, and having multiple screens through which there was a navigation, and we also had different users that were managed within this application, and we also had notifications flowing through or flowing to and from different users, right, within our team. We started from scratch. We actually created our Honeycode account, right, and then went ahead and implemented all the things that we wanted to implement, right. So just to summarize, what we did today is learned about what no code is, or what no-code app builder is. We looked at what we were going to build with Honeycode, and we went ahead and implemented it. We created a workbook. Within that, we created a few tables. In fact, we created 4 tables, and then we went ahead into Builder and created an app. Now, there are a lot more things that can be done using Honeycode, and there is really great documentation available. So if you could go to Google and just search for Honeycode documentation. So Honeycode documentation, you should get all the things that you need to go ahead and get cracking with basically Honeycode workbooks, right? You can also do a lot more than what we did here. The best place to start would be maybe implementing such an application that we did, but you could also go ahead and create, and what you have to do for that is go into My Drive, click this one, create a workbook, and you can create any of these templates, right? And then try to reverse engineer it to understand how you can create some really interesting and useful applications with Amazon Honeycode without writing a single line of code. Alright, so thank you for watching till the end, and have a good one. Stay awesome.